Oh, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. So last week, I think we put out a Q&A. So basically we put out a Q&A and we got a few pretty cool questions. So we thought it would be not a bad idea to actually pop them in the form of like a long format video, which would be a little bit more interesting, allow me to actually go into depth on a few of the answers. And we actually got like upwards of 20 questions asked, some of them pretty good. I did paraphrase these for when I do go through them, so it is in, to some degree, my words, just because I just popped them down on my notepad, well, the notes in my phone. But a little bit of value here today. I'll try to expand on everything as much as we can, but right now, as it stands, I believe it's the 24th of May today. Yeah, it is the 24th of May. We just wrapped up the season last week on the 19th, so we had no one actually competing at the national show in the ICN, contrary to what our expectations were initially. But nonetheless, it was a great season. We had 20 odd competitors take the stage and we had some pretty good results. So not only results with placings and overalls and pro cards, but some pretty good results in regards to how the people actually pulled up, the experience we had as a whole. And I'd be lying if I didn't say I am looking forward to a pretty cool break as we head into the back of the year. So as you are watching this right now, I am probably overseas for the Amateur Olympia in Alicante. So we are checking that out. So pretty cool. We'll do a little bit of wrap up on that too, because I've never actually been to a overseas show of that magnitude. But looking forward to Season B. I think I managed 18 competitors this season. I believe at this stage I'm managing 11 for Season B, and James will be managing 4 of his own. So I think we have about 15, a little bit less. But in saying that, anyone that knows us or has been following us for a while knows that we do have a tendency in picking up some competitors further along the line as we take the reins from other coaches who potentially aren't delivering the service as expected, or they're just a little bit of a glimpse in the coach-client relationship. So nonetheless, without further ado, let's break into these questions. So, just grabbing the phone back here. Alrighty, first question. What is the biggest mistake you made, if any, with your competitors in Season A? I actually was tossing up on this one earlier, believe it or not. One of the things was, in one of the Enhanced Boys prep, I did make a change in regards to his stack design. So I brought in something which would typically present a leaner, harder, dry look. But the thing was, he was looking lean, he was looking hard, he was looking dry with his current setup. And I thought, well, it can only make it better, can't it? The thing was, it didn't make it better at all. He had a pretty negative response to this compound, and we did see a negative impact on his physique. So the mistake that I believe I made there was, if it's not broken, don't fix it. If you have a winning formula, don't feel like you need to just keep going in line with the framework. And while I already knew this, it was a little bit of an educated decision, and a decision which to some degree backfired. But my other mistake would probably be, we brought in a natural diuretic for my brother James in H2 out by supplement needs for his ICN rookie show, and that didn't go as expected. He was sweating bullets on stage. I'm not going to say that necessarily was a mistake or it went bad, but nonetheless. And outside of that, I was pretty happy with how everything went circumstantially. So there wasn't too many mistakes. I've made mistakes in the past, especially in regards to conditioning, because sometimes the expectations of conditioning aren't quite what the reality is, especially when we're talking federations such as IFBB. But yeah, that would be pretty much it for that. So the next question is, what was your favorite show and why? Oof. I could definitely tell you what my least favorite was. Where did I have the best time? It'd probably be a good question. I had a really good time in Queensland. I really had a really good time in Queensland. The NBA Queensland show was great. The IFBB Queensland show is great. The IFBB Queensland show is always great. I want to say the IFBB Melbourne show, I had a really good time. But considering I had 5 competitors on the day and had some pretty interesting peak week structures, I think the stress just made that a little bit less enjoyable. So that's just me being honest. I would definitely say that the NBA Queensland show is probably where I had the most fun coaching with Claire and Jacob. And I would also say the IFBB Queensland show is probably where I had the best experience as a spectator. But let's not take away anything from any of the other shows. There was no shows I specifically didn't. I know there were shows I specifically didn't like, but we're not going to be negative here, eh? So on to the next question. Do you prefer flexible dieting or meal planning? Meal planning allows more predictability, it allows us to address nutrient adequacies, but at the same time, there can be a glimpse in adherence. In the context of a comp prep, we would assume that adherence is 100% at all times. Do I have a preference over the two? In regards to clients, it depends how adequate their application to flexible dieting is. So if they're really good with flexible dieting, I have no problems with flexible dieting, but we have to trust that they are good with their flexible dieting. I've had clients prep to the stage entirely on flexible dieting. I've had clients prep to the stage entirely on meal planning. I generally oversee the flexible elements, but I wouldn't say I have a specific preference. I could probably draw this back to me. I rather meal planning with some degree of flexibility. So I have a structured meal plan and I just vary things as we go on, day to day, just based on availability, based on what I'm feeling like, based on just trying to keep things from being mundane. So I'd say a hybrid of the two is what I prefer. Okay, next question. What blood work would you look at in the context of a prep? Context of a prep. Okay, what blood work would I look at? It really depends on the individual. I think one of the biggest points of interest is going to be the thyroid output, T3, T4, TSH, because this does get heavily skewed throughout the course of a contest prep and will downregulate significantly. But the thing is, in some individuals, we will see a significant downregulation, in others we won't. What other blood work in the context of a comp prep would I look at? We'd need to probably look at the red blood cell count, hemoglobin, etc., just in case there is a downregulation here, in particular in females, likewise with iron. We'd also want to look at hormone panels. But the thing is with hormone panels, if we do see a downregulation here in a comp prep, it's unlikely that we can really do anything about it. So is it super important? I don't know. Can we look at deficiencies in blood work? To a degree. Is there anything super interesting that we can address on the back end of the prep? Probably. If things seem like they were going a little bit wrong, potentially, but thyroid would be where my interest would lie in regards to something which we actually can address, natural or enhanced. Obviously, in enhanced, we go with a thyroid replacement. In a natural individual, we'll be looking at supporting that through various cofactors. But typically, in my practice, I do bring in a thyroxine, like a thyroid support. Thyroxine by Thorne is what I use. That's why it's called thyroxine. I'm not talking about levothyroxine or T4 as more of a general rule of thumb based on symptoms which they are presenting. Outside of this, blood work typically won't dictate your lack of results or ability to achieve results. If you were an individual who downregulated from a hormonal perspective early, there's not a hell of a lot we can do about this. So yeah, it would probably be more of interest in an enhanced individual, and it'd be more of an interest after the show to make sure that we can rectify potential shortcomings or the impact of the prep itself. Who do you think was your best performer for season A? I'm actually not going to base this on results. Okay, I don't want to take credit away from anyone. Everyone did really, really well. If we had to do it based on results, I think Jo won the most medals. She also did like 3 shows, so that helps. Not to discredit that. If I had to take my best performer, if we had to look at it in a 12-month turnaround, a 12-month window on the progress that has been made, I would probably have to say, Jude, because he came to me as a skinny little runt about a year and a half ago, and he looked like a fucking bodybuilder up there. He also started the prep pretty fat. So that was definitely it's the most impressive. But furthermore to that, no, I don't want to say too much. I don't want to take credit away. Everyone did really well. There was no one that I was like ultimately like disappointed in. So no, I think James Lay really impressed me with his conditioning as well. That's another one. He was, especially for someone that really struggled to pull it in at the start. And we had few little hiccups, which actually made progress a little bit more difficult, which I won't get into. But everyone did really well. I think Claire won a lot on the medals too, so we could relate that back to that as well. And she had a really good prep too. But I was happy with everyone, man, to be honest. So did you have trouble managing so many clients during the comp prep season? Surprisingly, not really. I was glued to my computer for the week of IFBB, just having 5 people competing with like pretty large loads, considering like the fact that we had exogenous support. So that was definitely a difficult week, especially when we had one of the boys loading like 1,000 carbs a day across 5 days, and that was just like mind-blowing. But surprisingly, no, I managed quite well. So basically what I would do was I would give every single client like a spreadsheet, which would have day by day, hour by hour, everything they need to be eating, drinking, photos, touch points, etc. So everything that to relay back to me. And then I just keep a close tab on that. So in the morning, I'd open up on the peak week, I'd open up all the competitors for that week's spreadsheets. I'd open the coaching app on the other tabs, and then I'd constantly reference that back every time that hit a timestamp where that actually relay information to me, whether that be scale weight, whether that be how they're feeling, whether that be photos, so on and so forth. And I found by doing this, provided I was sat in this chair or my office chair when we were at the office, so we've actually now moved out of the office temporarily, I found it was quite easy to manage. I can't think of any situation where it really did overwhelm me either. It was a little bit difficult with the AMB backing onto the IFBB Queensland because I had to fly out in the morning, and the flight actually got delayed, so that was not fun. But we had Isabel there, so it became a lot easier to manage in that department, just solely because she was the eye. She'd relay if anything seemed off. And Isabel and James are both really, really well up to speed with what all my competitors are doing, how they look when they're full, flat, spilling, etc. So that made it super easy to manage. Because obviously a few of the preps I did remotely, such as I did Claire and Sherwin's primarily remotely, besides arriving there in the morning. I did Claire and Jacob again in the back of the season remotely, and I did Bettina's remotely for FMG. And I do feel like with Claire's first peak, it was probably her best peak when I actually wasn't there. And Bettina's peak was now to a T. If anything, we probably were too sharp and too full, which obviously worked against us with the bikini criteria for FMG. But no, I actually didn't struggle, man. Like, I'm pretty surprised at myself, especially because I remember I actually wanted to taper clients down coming into the season. But when we had a little bit of a change in the business model, so we had the fourth coach, which didn't work out, I did have to sustain some of the workload, which would have otherwise been transferred to her. And when I realized I had to sustain, I was like, this is going to be a hell of a season, but actually I was able to keep it up pretty well. So I was pretty happy with the way that things just went as a whole. Okay, how do you go about training programs? Do you have a style you prefer over others? I'm a big advocate of training to failure. Do I have a specific method for training? I have a preferred method, which I like as more of a rule of thumb, but that's not to say that all my clients follow the same methodologies in regards to training. I have some doing really high volume, shy of failure, some doing really low volume, really close to failure. So like while I have, for example, let's just think of an example here. I have James doing 12 sets a session, James Lay. I have Julian doing 22 to 24 sets a session. I have Paul doing 12 set session with a heap of cluster sets. And then I have others doing straight sets for 3 set working sets and exercise. In some I incorporate warm-up sets as sets on the program, others I don't. Pretty adaptable to the client, but typically if I went down like my fundamental way when a client first comes into my office or on that Zoom call, the way that I would go about it is usually 2 or 3 working sets and exercise, usually in the leaning towards 2, unless it give me previous data to say that they like higher volume, then I would probably tip up to 3, but I would look at 3 for more isolation-based exercises. And I'm probably looking between 70 and 85 working sets a week, just as a starting point, unless I have pre-data. For reference, some of my really good clients don't actually even get up to the 70 working set mark. I don't do up to 70 working sets. I sit a little bit less than that. And that's how I like it and how in an ideal world I'd like to see things. But I also need to respect that that's not for everyone. Not everyone will respond to that. And not everyone will enjoy that. So we need to consider that the program that you enjoy and the program that you can stick to and progressively overload on is a program which you're going to make the most progress with outside of the perfect program. What is your biggest regret in your fitness journey? Not competing enough earlier would probably be it. Not taking my bodybuilding seriously early enough, not getting a coach earlier. So I recently, or not recently, probably 6 months ago, I put out a video say that I was coached by Luke Miller, which all fair and well, that went well, but I did get a good opportunity with Joe Jeffrey and I decided to switch across. And Joe's been nothing short of fantastic. I've been really, really happy with his services. But I do wish I had that guidance when I was probably 21, 22, when I first got into everything. And I wish I stuck with that coach all the way through, or as long as I felt like there was still a degree of authority there and I was still learning from it, etc. But definitely wish I started that earlier so I could definitely have more of a stint at the bodybuilding and actually being competitive. And that wrap. Well, there's actually one more question, but my camera is about to die. So thank you for tuning in. Short, sharp, to the point. Drop some questions below. Let me know if there's anything else that I can do for you guys. Feel free to subscribe and don't hesitate reaching out if you have any further questions. I'll speak to you all soon.